Thank you all for your practice. So tonight's topic is finding the good. And I spent about, I'd say 12 to 15 hours this week writing this talk after work and on the weekend. And so, of course, right before I was about to show up here, right as I went to print out my talk, the program I was using froze, and this talk was the one file that didn't recover. So now I'm forced to find the good in this situation and cobble together some notes that I had made and just hope for the best. So, finding the good. Do any of you watch the news?
Yes.
It can be really hard to find the good when you're watching the news. You know, they popularize and sensationalize the most horrible events happening around. You know, this fear sells, right? You know, if you were to really believe everything that they said, you know, with their horror movie graphics and their dramatic music, you know, there's police brutality, which does happen. You know, there's a war going on between Ukraine and Russia. There's a lot of negativity in the world. And if we focus on the negativity, it can be a little overwhelming. And it can make the world seem like a really negative place. And if you're on this path, you know, you may have a tendency, you may notice the tendency within ourselves to give more attention to negative things than to positive things. And I think this happens with everybody. You know, we have this built-in negativity bias that directs our attention towards the negative things in life. And we all have this. Don't feel like you're alone. It's pretty common. Really, everyone has it. And it's what it is a leftover survival mechanism. You know, because when we were evolving as a species, there was a lot of threats. You know, there was tigers and bears and God knows what else. Obviously, I wasn't alive then, but we had to be constantly vigilant for threats, you know, that could harm us, injure us, kill us. And so we evolved with this negativity bias that registers negative emotions and memories more frequently than it does positive ones. In fact, it takes only 3 seconds to register a negative memory and 12 seconds to register a positive one, which sucks. And it can cause us to not only notice more negative things, but to linger on hurtful words or actions while neglecting to really embrace positivity and gratitude in our lives. And what we frequently think and ponder upon does become the inclination of the mind. So if we think about negative aspects of life, we're going to have a more negative view. If we think about the more positive aspects of life, we're obviously going to have a more positive view. And again, if you watch the news, especially if you watch the news, you're going to probably have the tendency to lean more towards the negative side. But the Buddha encourages us to find the good in everything. And so tonight I'd like to talk about just some practical ways that we can find good in ourselves and in our life and in the world in general. You know, so whether we're dealing with difficult situations, negative people, or even our own negative thoughts, we can train our minds to focus on the good and cultivate a more positive outlook. As I said, what we frequently think and ponder upon does become the inclination of the mind. So in other words, what we focus on becomes our reality. If we keep our attention on negative aspects of life, we'll find more reasons to be unhappy. And if we focus on the more positive aspects of life, we'll generally be happier. And I used to be really bad about focusing on the negative things in my life. You know, I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life. I grew up, an only child of a single parent. And my mother wasn't very present in my life, even though she was my caregiver. You know, I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 13. My father died when I was 20. I experienced addiction and did some jail time over that. And so if I really wanted to, I could have this outlook that life is just ultimately a negative experience. And I did, for the longest time, have that outlook. I didn't like my life. I didn't like myself. In fact, I hated myself. And that didn't get me very far. Hatred is never appeased by hatred. By love alone is hatred appeased. But through this practice, I've gotten to the point where I actually do like myself these days. In fact, I love myself. And those are words I never thought I would be able to say. I love myself. It was completely foreign to me, the idea of loving myself. I could love other people. I could love pancakes. But I couldn't love myself. And so in a world that does at times seem completely negative, how can we shift our view towards the more positive? The first way that we can do this is with mindfulness. Just by being mindful, particularly of the third foundation of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of the mind, or mindfulness of chitta. And chitta translates more like heart-mind. Stephen Batchelor actually translates chitta as soul. So this is like the attitudinal lens in which we view the world. So say you wake up and the first thing you do is stub your toe, and then you check your email and you have a nasty message from somebody, and you go in and you try to start your car and it won't start. And you're like, oh, it's going to be one of those days, right? Well, yeah, of course it is, because you already have it in your mind that the day is going to be negative. But if you wake up and, you get a nice message from a friend and you're like, oh, that's nice. And then you go and you get in your car and that has a full tank of gas and it starts up right away. And you hit all the green lights. That makes for a pretty positive experience, right? So this attitudinal lens influences the way in which we operate in the world. And so by being mindful of the lens we're wearing, if we're wearing rose-colored glasses, well, the world's going to seem rosy. If we're wearing anger glasses and negativity glasses, it's going to seem a lot more negative. So just by paying attention to the conditions around us and the way that we react to them, that can be a good place to begin shifting our experience. And we also have to look for the good. We have to try to find the good things in life, by hanging out with positive people, by doing positive things, going into nature. I don't know about you guys, but I love nature. And just going into nature can, what is the Mary Tyler Moore thing? Suddenly take a nothing day and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile, right? But just by looking for the good, we can find more positivity in the world. Another way that we can do this is by cultivating metta. Metta is this, in Pali it translates as loving kindness, and it's one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. And the Brahma Viharas are what are known as the divine abodes. This word Brahma is the Hindu word for God, and Vihara translates as dwelling or abode. So it's really the house of God. There are 4 Brahma Viharas and 4 chambers of the heart. The other Brahma Viharas, aside from metta, are mudita, karuna, and upekkha. And metta is a way that we can cultivate this quality of loving kindness within ourselves and then radiate that out towards the world. It's this loving kindness towards not only all beings, but everything, the world itself. It involves cultivating a warm and friendly attitude towards yourself and everything else, which can be kind of difficult, at first. For me, it was really difficult, especially the self part. As I said, loving myself was a completely foreign idea to me. I didn't even know that was possible. And the reason I use this word cultivate is because in the Pali Canon, which is the first recorded text of the Buddha's teachings, there was no word for meditation. There was this word bhavana. And bhavana translates as cultivation. So we work to cultivate these qualities in ourselves. And we don't have to look for them because they're already there. we're born with these qualities. We're born with the quality of kindness. We're born with the quality of compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. This homeostatic place of equanimity, just being right in the middle. Not really swaying towards the negative or the positive, not grasping for the positive, not pushing away from the negative, but being okay with whatever arises. I think that's a pretty good way to describe equanimity. So we want to cultivate these qualities. And we do this, especially with metta and the other Brahma Viharas, through our meditation practice. By offering ourselves these phrases, may I be at ease, may I be at peace, may I be kind and gentle with myself, may I be filled with loving kindness. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive, and a lot of times when you're first beginning a Brahma Vihara practice, it can be what's called a dry practice. You're just repeating the phrases over and over and over, and it seems like nothing is really happening. But what we're doing is we're inclining the mind towards these states. So metta is a wonderful way to find more good in ourselves and in the world. Another way that we can find the good in ourselves and in the world is mudita, which is sympathetic joy, finding joy in the joy of others. I've got some roughly cobbled together notes here, so bear with me. And Jack Kornfield says that mudita invites us to open a channel to joy, delight, and creativity. Joy arises like the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, from following the heart's silent source. When we get still and the mind quiet and the heart opens, we remember that Buddhas live in joy among the troubled. Out of that stillness, there's a silent source of something beautiful that wants to come through every one of us. And so finding the good in the world can be challenging, and often frightening. We're bombarded with news of war, natural disasters, and other tragedies constantly. And it's easy to become overwhelmed and to lose hope at times. But when we practice metta and we extend loving kindness to all beings, including those who may be causing harm or that we consider enemies, we can begin to unarmor the heart. We have all these defenses that we put up around our heart, and it's a protection mechanism. Some of you have heard me talk about Mara. Mara is kind of like the Buddhist devil, basically. And what Mara really is this protection mechanism that we have. This doubt that we have in ourselves, this aversion we have towards ourselves. It's like the protector that we had when we were children. But I don't know about you, but I'm a 41-year-old man, and I don't need Mara to protect me anymore. I can protect myself. When we practice metta, we can also begin to notice the good in the world around us. As I said, we have to look for the good. Sometimes. Sometimes it's right in our face. Sometimes you lose your entire Dharma talk, like literally 20 minutes before you're supposed to give it. And then you have to find the good. You have to look for it. Another thing that we can do to really find the good and to be more, how can I put this? To be in just a better state of mind is concentration meditation. And concentration meditation is a single-pointed concentration. So as we were doing in the meditation before this, we focus on the breath. And by focusing on the breath consistently, we can reach a state that's called jhana. And that's something I don't think I've actually talked about in here before. Jhana is a state of deep concentration and meditative absorption. And that's achieved through the practice of mindfulness and meditation. Like I said, this single-pointed concentration practice. And it involves focusing the mind on a single object, as I said, such as the breath, or I've really gotten into what's called fire kasina. Kasina just means object. So what I do is I sit with and meditate on the candle flame. And this is kind of like a shortcut to these states of jhana. And the Buddha said, and what, monks, is right concentration? Here, secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by thought and examination, with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. So there's this state of happiness and this joy that can come through this concentration practice by just simply sitting and observing the breath. You can enter a state of really bliss, and you'll know it when you get it. It's pretty evident. It does take some time. You can't get there in a couple minutes. You do have to sit for an extended period. But just using the single pointed concentration, you can reach these states of jhana. And there are 8 stages of jhana. We're really only concerning ourselves with the first 4. In other words, jhana is a state of deep concentration and focus that's achieved by letting go of distractions and focusing the mind on a single object. And through this practice, we can develop insight and mental clarity and wisdom. And this practice offers, this Buddhist practice, it does offer practical tools for finding the good. And by cultivating metta and mudita and meditating, just this concentration meditation practice, we can find the good and we can achieve a more positive outlook. We can attract more positivity into our lives. And metta, we can develop greater compassion and empathy towards ourselves and towards others. And with mudita, we can find the joy of others. And with jhana, as I said, we can achieve greater insight and wisdom, which can ultimately lead us to this state of nibbana, which is this cooling off of reactivity. I don't know if there's any bells and whistles that come with nibbana and enlightenment, but lessen reactivity I'm good with. Like if I can lessen my reactivity at all, that's great. And I really need that, especially on days like today, when the lovely talk I had prepared goes right down the toilet, literally like when I was on my way here. And so I wish this was a longer talk, and I wish it had a little more information in it, but as I said, it went into the ether, so here we are.